Effective communication. This is a topic that I coach on a great deal. Sometimes people come to me because there's been a disruption, there's been a miscommunication, and they need some help, some guidance, some coaching on how to better communicate. Sometimes it's because they're not communicating their worth, their value in order to get the promotion, position themselves for the raise, get past the final stage of the interview, get the job, right? So it's not just communicating one-on-one in a work setting or in a team. It could be how they are um, relating with other people. And sometimes it's not through words. So the art of effective communication. This is going to be a quick overview on how to connect, convey, and create understanding. So I just mentioned that communication is more than what you say. It is also about the connection you create. We're going to go into a bit more detail about that in a second. And effective communicators listen to understand, not to reply. If any of you ever read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, that was one of the habits that I loved so much. Seek first to understand, not to be understood. And I think that we've just got so much evidence if you're on social media or watching news or any of that, that most people are trying to convince, right? Are trying to dissuade or persuade. That is not how you effectively communicate. It's a two-way street when you're communicating. So you want to make sure that what you are saying so that they can understand your perspective, and you will do the same for that person or that audience. It's a respectful interaction between two audiences, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes one-to-many. So when you are doing this, when you are understanding, when you are listening, when you are communicating in ways other than just your words, you are building trust, you are building clarity on your message, and then hopefully a shared meaning. There's a reason you're having this discussion. There's something you have in common that you are wanting to relate to each other, right? So here's the first thing, and I find this often. Someone just says, I'm just really angry with that employee and I need to talk to that employee. Okay, that's fair, but what's your message? What do you want to make sure they take away from the interaction? And listen, you really don't have complete control whether they take away what your intention is or not, but how can you be so clear? How can you be so focused? And how can you be so calm that they are open to listening to you and you are able to convey your message clearly? So you want to get clear on the purpose of the messaging. Are you going to inform them, inspire them, influence them, inquire? It's really helpful. Just remember those 4 I's: inform, influence, inspire, inquire. And when you have a decision, when you know which one it is, then you can start to tailor your message, right, to what their needs are and not your ego. You're not in there to be like, rah, 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 rah. That is never going to be successful when it comes to effectively communicating. You might actually communicate, but it won't be that effective. And then you want to make sure your message is simple. Man, I've got to work on this. I love lots of words. You can tell these videos end up getting longer and longer. And what we really want to do is hone in on one message. What are you trying to inform them of, influence them about, inspire them to do, inquire? So clarity is kind. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. I love it so much. Clarity is kind, and it beats clever every time. So you're not trying to get anybody. You're not trying to be manipulative. You're not, or rather, effective communication does not include being manipulative, trying to get somebody. It really is more about being very, very clear. Okay, so I've mentioned before with the Stephen Covey reference about seek first to understand, not to be understood. That is so important. Listening is a superpower. I actually got my master's in counseling specifically so that I could hone my listening skills. And oh my word, it's been so very effective for me to have elevated my listening skills in all the jobs I've had. And again, remember that you're not just listening for words, right? You're listening to understand, not respond. I believe very, very much in this as a way of showing respect to the other person. And you've often heard this too, right? You're not supposed to be listening so you can go, oh, I want to attack that, or oh, I want to respond to that, or oh, I want to challenge that. No, you're just listening. You're just listening. Um, you know, do not be like taking notes on what you're going to respond to. You're right there, you're present, you're making eye contact. And then you want to ask questions before you offer any solution or any rebuttal, right? Get a bit curious, like, okay, you mentioned this, I'm curious about that, or I wonder about this, or could you share a little bit more about that, right? So what I hear you saying, reflecting is always important too. And this isn't like the therapist reflecting necessarily, though it can sort of sound like that, right? But it is important to say what I hear you say, not what you said, because it's what I heard you say. Remember, we're communicating, but it could be going like this. It could be that we're just listening for what we want to hear, and we're going to respond with, this is what I wanted to hear you say, so this is what I'm going to say I heard, right? No, we want to make sure we are very, very clear. So the other is, I've mentioned that you want to listen for things that are not being said. Tone, the emotion, like the energy in the voice, body language. If someone's like this telling you a bunch of stuff, it doesn't really appear that they're really open and trying to build trust, right? It looks like they're on the defense and they're going to be like, maybe a little accusatory. And also, if you're talking at a very, very high pitched voice, it might be that you are like super excitable about this and very upset about it, and are really, really excited, and you want to have an effective conversation to be able to pitch why you want the promotion, or you want them to become your client, or you want to position yourself for the raise. Now, I know that silence is awkward. We are not used to silence in this world. The second something becomes quiet, people pick up their phones, right? Or they get busy doing something else. Silence is also part of the superpower. Silence is a part of listening. You're listening in the silence also. You're watching for body language, for tone. You're watching for any emotions that might show up. So while it's awkward for some, it's also very powerful. And it's important that you maintain the silence, not for a million, not for a long, long time, but your silence is also an indication potentially that the other person's processing what you've just shared. It doesn't mean that the conversation's over, there's nothing more. It could, but it also could be that the person is processing. This is a little bit harder on a Zoom call, I will say, or anything virtual Teams, any of those, than in person. And I do like to say that silence can be both awkward and powerful. Two things can be true at the same time, right? So listen to lead. And the next is, be very thoughtful, mindful of your delivery. How you say what you're going to say matters as much as what you say. You know that if someone's coming at you in a very let's say passionate, assertive, not say aggressive way, you're not going to hear everything they're saying. You might feel very uncomfortable, and you're just thinking about safety, safety, safety in that moment, or how what they're saying is so inappropriate or is incorrect or whatever it might be. You're not going to listen. So you want to really make sure that your body language and your tone are in line with what you're saying. Your energy level matches the energy level in your words, matches your body's energy level, just relaxed, open. I do suggest to my clients, before they're going to have a conversation, that they want to be effective in whatever it is that they're pitching or asking for, that they also think about where they're going to sit or stand, what they're going to be wearing. That communicates a lot of things as well too, right? Where their hands are going to be, where their eyes are going to be. If there's a whole bunch of people to whom that they're addressing, how are they going to make sure that all are included in their eye contact? There's a lot more. This is a really just surface level lesson in how to effectively communicate, but there's a lot more to think about, isn't there? Okay, the other is, I mentioned just calm, confident, clear energy. Yes, clear and clean. I like the word clean energy too. Like, you're just not there to get something and be graspy, right? You're just there to hopefully share your words and have them land so that you can hear their words and have them land. Okay, so then you also want to pause regularly. If you are a presenter in front of a large audience, you've probably already learned this, that you want to pause so that it gives time for people to absorb what you're saying, to process what you're saying. And the pause is, of course, silence, but it does not need to be awkward unless you tell yourself it's awkward. Silence is just neutral until you have a thought about it, right? So rushing is not effective. I find myself doing this a lot. In fact, it's the feedback I get the most when I give a presentation, that I rushed. I have so much excitement. There's so much I want to get through that I'm not focusing on the primary message and really, really driving it home, right? So this is an area I'm really working on. And then you do want to take notice of, do they seem like they're lost? Are they with you with the conversation? Do they seem like they're in agreement? Are they resisting? Just again, that's probably going to come more from body language than words initially if you're speaking, and hopefully they're staying quiet, just as you'll stay quiet when they're speaking. Take note of those things. Don't just sort of gloss over and focus just on what you're saying. Okay, communication ultimately is about building connection. It's relationship building. right? When we communicate, you've probably heard people say, well, the marriage ended because he was not a communicator. I can see how that could happen. If it's like, we just have to mind read, just have to guess what we're thinking at all times, that can get very frustrating, right? So it's about building the trust and the connection. And I love this phrase, communication builds culture. Think about that. My husband has always shared that you want to keep your people informed, right? So that's a cultural value when you are communicating frequently and thoroughly, so that no one's going, I wonder what's happening next. I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what their mood is, et cetera, et cetera. People can feel truth. So be transparent, be authentic. This is, again, not a time for clever. It's a time for clarity. Own your mistakes. If this conversation involves reviewing something that had happened before in the past, an hour ago or 5 weeks ago or whenever it might be, own your responsibility. If you've listened to any of the other videos I have here, there's a great slide deck I made on taking 100% responsibility. And this ties right in with it. So you're going to build trust and credibility when you say, this is what I see as my contribution to the situation, assuming that maybe it's a negative situation. Positive too. That's great. Also, that's also self-promoting. Yes. And then adapt your style to whom you are speaking. This is so important during interviews, friends. Don't go in with your canned answers and you're speaking to people who are very data related and you're just going to tell these stories. They might just zone out, right? Likewise, if you go in with all this data to prove that you are capable of raising tremendous amounts of money or getting this number of clients or serving this many students, whatever it might be. And they want to warm it up. They want to know a little bit more, like kind of speak it into a movie form, right? Then you're not going to be relating. So the responsibility is on you as the communicator. It's on them as well, but you can only control you. I hope this has been helpful. So we want to make sure that we come from a place of clarity, that we think about communication as more than just the words we speak, but also our actions, our body language, our tone, how we're wearing, where our hands are. If I'm like this talking to you, it's going to be much, much different, right? Than if I'm leaning back in my chair. You want to be very intentional about things like this. Please remember that the power comes from listening, understanding. Seek first to understand, not be understood. And I'm not expecting that these are difficult conversations. When I say an effective communicator, again, it could be that you are effectively communicating a project suggestion, right? That doesn't have to involve any kind of conflict. Or effectively communicating your positioning for a raise or a promotion, as I mentioned, why you want this job, why you want to lead a larger team, why you need more money in your budget, whatever it might be. This is all about communicating effectively. So I hope this helps you. And I'm curious to know which of these you feel like you need to focus on a bit more. We all can grow in every one of these areas and just get better and better.